Court sentenced 3 to death, discharge, acquit 4 on Alu killing. Lagos Chief Judge grants amnesty to 80 underage inmates. Plus, FCT residents hail court judgment on Alu killings. Many thanks for joining us today on Judiciary Watch. I am Augusta Yaku. Our discuss this week will be on domestic violence and the domestication of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act in Nigeria. Barrister IKENGA NGOZI THERESA will be helping us do justice to the topic.
When our women comes to us to complain, we invite their husbands to hear from them, because that is law for you. You must hear from both sides to draw the line.
All the details in just a moment.
You just watch Judiciary Watch,
because there's no program that is like it.
Justice Letam Nyodi of the High Court in Port Harcourt has sentenced 3 out of 7 people facing trial in the killing of 4 students of the University of Port Harcourt, popularly called Alu 4. Consequently, those sentenced to death include ex-Sergeant Lucky Oji, Ikechukwu Louis Amadi, and David Chinasa Ogbaga. The other 4 suspects facing trial, Abiodun Yusuf, Joseph Ekpe, Abang Cyril, and John Ayu, were discharged and acquitted for lack of overwhelming evidence.
Justice Nyodi, in his judgment, blamed the accused persons for embarking on mob actions without having the facts about the action of the students. The judge said the death of the 4 children was a culmination of the shameful failure of security institutions, especially in the area of intelligence sharing, adding that the police, the C4I and the Joint Military Task Force failed in their responsibility. Speaking with newsmen, counsel to the convicted persons, Obidimma C. Obidimma, assured that judgment will be reappealed and that the decision of the court was based on findings of the investigation.
The matter was slated for judgment, and judgment have been given. I represented the first, second, third and 7th accused person. Eventually, the 7th accused person was discharged and acquitted. But unfortunately, the first, second, and third, which I also represented, were sentenced to death. However, looking at the judgment, on our own end, we are sure that we are going to appeal based on the grounds of appeal spotted out in the judgment.
Meanwhile, counsel to Abang Cyril, the 7th defendant, Abadias Charles Abapa, explained that his client Abang Cyril did not take part in mob action that led to the death of Alu 4 victims. However, father of one of the killed students, Mike Toku, expressed joy in the judgment that the only consolation from the decision of the court is that the children who were wrongly killed have been vindicated.
I'm happy that the element of robbery, criminality has been removed from the 4 boys who were killed in Alu. It is now clear that they did not go there to steal. They were not criminal. They only went there to demand for death, and unfortunately, they were killed. And I'm also happy that the 3 of them have been, sentenced, to death because of the crime they committed.
For his part, Director of Public Prosecutions, Ibiriki Otorubio, said the state will study the judgment and decide on the next line of action. 12 people were standing trial for the murder of the young undergraduates, but 5 were discharged early this year.
The Chief Judge of Lagos State, Justice Olufumilayo Atilade, on Monday granted amnesty to 80 underage inmates of the Badagry prisons. The minors, whose ages range from 12 to 17, were said to have been arrested and charged with offences of breach of public peace and having no means of livelihood. Justice Atilade, who visited the prison on Monday, noted that the amnesty granted the underage inmates was in tandem with the resolution of the judiciary to protect the child's rights and to also decongest prisons nationwide. Only 28 names out of the 80 minors released were sent to the Lagos State Prisons Decongestion Committee, headed by Justice Oluwatoyin Ikpaye, for a review of their cases. But a visit to the prison showed that 90% of the inmates in the prisons were actually underage, and the chief judge had to painstakingly review more cases together with her team. While setting the inmates free, the chief judge urged them to be of good behavior and to go and sin no more. Nigerians have hailed the judgment of the Federal High Court sitting in Port Harcourt that sentenced to death some of the accused persons involved in the killing of 4 students of the University of Port Harcourt in 2012. This, they hope, will serve as a deterrent to would-be arsonists.
A federal high court sitting in Port Harcourt on the 31st of July 2017 passed a verdict on the accused persons who were said to be responsible for the murder of some 4 students of the Universities of Port Harcourt, popularly known as AL4. This judgment has elicited responses from Nigerians, some among who said that justice was served in the judgment, which sentenced 3 amongst the accused to death and discharged and acquitted the other accused persons for lack of overwhelming evidence.
The right thing to be done, because I feel those student blood are crying for help. I mean, this thing has happened long time ago and then it's just surfacing now. I think it's the right thing to do, and everybody that was involved in one way or the other, those that stoned them, the police guys that were around, I think everybody should be sentenced to death because they actually took the law in their own hands.
It's a very good one. I can say that Nigerian Judiciary have made a very good point. So even they should not delay in hanging them or shooting them to death, because what they did to those young boys, those students from University of Port Harcourt, is very bad. It's a very big loss to the parents of those boys. And this public assault, they destroy their human right, their fundamental human rights.
As far as it has come out clear that these people, they did wrong to the killing, and justice has prevailed, it's a welcome one.
That is proper, that is a normal thing, because they are human beings, they are children. We know how we suffer for children, to take care of these children. It's not proper, it's not a normal thing.
So when I heard about the death or sentencing of 3 people yesterday, I was not that happy, because they were more than 3 people that did that thing. So why should they sentence only 3 people? They were more than 3. So they should just investigate very well and fish out those more of those people that did that thing. Because those guys, they just wasted lives there, those innocent souls. We Nigerians, me in particular, I was not happy about it.
Also speaking on why the case took so long, respondents are of the opinion that the length of time was for thorough investigations to be made. Nigerians have, however, frowned at mob actions, enjoining all to get law enforcement officers involved in cases instead of resorting to jungle justice.
Whenever you arrest somebody you suspect is a criminal, is a thief, is an armed robber, is a killer, he raped a woman or a girl, hand that person over properly to the police.
If something like this happens, they should first of all take them to the police. Though our police are not helping issues. Sometimes when you take them to the police, before you know it, those people will go from the backyard. So that is why Nigerians are very angry. So that is why when they catch maybe somebody that is like this, they don't have any option than to launch the person. But that is not the right solution to those things.
In the light of the above, it is hoped that the judgment will serve as a deterrent to others who would rather take justice into their own hands.
If you are just joining us, this is Judiciary Watch. It's time to take another break. When we return, Judiciary Watch Discuss will be next. Please don't go away.
You just watch Judiciary Watch.
Because there's no program that is like it.
For several decades, domestic violence has been on the front burner in national discourse, but the inhuman act still lingers in our society, which consequently led to the domestication of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015. To gain more insight on the VAP Act, as well as the current anti-domestic violence drive, Judiciary Watch visited the office of the International Federation of Female Lawyers, FIDA, at the Federal Ministry of Justice, Abuja, where it met with the FIDA chairperson, Abuja branch, Barrister IKENGA THERESA. Our discussion with her will come to you after the background report.
Domestic violence, also named domestic abuse, battering or family violence, is a pattern of behavior which involves violence or abuse by one person against another in a domestic setting, such as in marriage or cohabitation. It can also be in form of intimate partner violence, where a spouse or partner in an intimate relationship violates the other spouse or partner. Domestic violence can take place in heterosexual and same-sex family relationships and can involve violence against children in the family. Here in Africa, Nigeria remains the country with the highest chance of having domestic violence, with a population of over 170 million people. Little wonder the federal government passed into law in the year 2015 the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act, VAPT Act 2015. The act was passed into law in a bid to eliminate violence in private and public life, prohibit all forms of violence, including physical, sexual, psychological, domestic, harmful traditional practices, discrimination against persons, and to provide maximum protection and effective remedies for victims and punishment of offenders. Under the VAP Act, rape, spousal battery, forceful ejection from home, forced financial dependence or economic abuse, harmful widowhood practices, female circumcision or genital mutilation, abandonment of children, harmful traditional practices, harmful substance attacks such as acid bath, political violence, forced isolation and separation from family and friends, depriving persons of their liberty, incest, indecent exposure, and violence by state actors, especially government security forces, among others, are punishable offenses.
You just watch Judiciary Watch.
Because there's no program that is like it.
We're here at the office of the International Federation of Female Lawyers to meet with the chairperson, Mrs. IKENGA THERESA. Today we're going to be talking about domestic violence and its effect in the society. You're welcome, ma. It's an honor having you on this episode.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
To answer our first question, what is domestic violence and what constitutes domestic violence?
Domestic violence is an aggressive act of a spouse. I say spouse because it could be the other way around, on the other, that causes grievous harm to the victim. Is a violence or aggressiveness of a spouse, on the other, that causes harm to the other person whom is being meted to or meted on.
So, what are the examples of domestic violence?
Domestic violence could also be referred to as a physical assault or battery, where you have one beating the other. Mainly women. Women are usually the victims. And it does not only mean battery. It could be even psychological, where one is taught into intimidation, abuse, and sometimes under the pretense of love. Some will say, I love my wife, I'm being jealous and this, and it degenerates to causing her physical harm. So that is domestic violence, and it's gradually eating into our society, really eating into our society. and women are usually on the receiving end of it.
Okay. What are the causes of domestic violence?
Like I earlier said, some will say it's love, out of jealousy, that will even lead to death. Some will say, well, religion, tradition, or just wickedness and aggressiveness of the male counterpart, because it's more from on the male side. When we talk about violence, the men that suffer domestic violence are just about 5%.
Okay. So most people are of the notion that domestic violence is usually committed by men against women, but we know as a matter of fact that there are women out there who are guilty of this same offense against men. What can you say about that?
There are, because you don't have a perfect setting, you don't have a perfect world. So where you have some good or bad happening on one side, you see it too on the other side. But the indices to quantify is just the occurrence, the number of times it happens, the repeatedness or the side that is more. So you see that domestic violence is usually suffered by women. We know there's some men, maybe 5%, like I said, that goes through domestic violence from their female spouse to counterparts. But then it's a very minimal number, so women are more on the receiving side of domestic violence. So we don't encourage women or support women who also make this inhuman treatment on their spouse. We don't encourage that. That is why when our women comes to us to complain, we invite their husbands to hear from them, because that is law for you. You must hear from both sides to draw the line. So we don't always take hook, line and sinker what we've heard from our women folks or that. So we hear from the spouse and we're able to draw a line where it is. But if you look at the statistics, you find out that actually women are always the victim of domestic violence.
Okay.
Yes.
What does the law say about domestic violence?
Yes, before now, I'll use FCT as an example. It has been very quiet, very domicile, on domestic violence. But now with the enactment of this VAP Act, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015, this is a brainchild of our National Assembly, and it has actually taken care of most of these things, the VAP Act, and thank God that is effective in FCT. So we've been talking to our branch members, that's our FIDA members in other branches, to lobby their government to see that this VAP Act is domesticated in all the states, because we have branches in almost all the states of the Federation. So we've been lobbying them. But so far in FCT, since the enactment of this VAP Act, it has been, let me say, better than what we used to have. Because we have secured some conviction with this VAP Act in FCT, and it's really working. Let me read that from the VAP Act. This is the simplified version of the VAP Act that we have put together, extracting it and trying to exemplify it so that no matter the level, it could be well digested.
Okay.
This is para/partner battery. This one is talking about the physical assault, beating. You can see it here is amplified. So the punishment for it here is that anyone that does this to the other, be it, you can see it's the husband and wife that is being demonstrated, but you can see that it's the man that is actually punching the woman, to show you how it is. So, but anyone that is found guilty of this, say here, will be sent to prison for up to 3 years or pay a fine of up to 200 or both fine and imprisonment. 200. So it's as serious as that.
200
yes.
naira.
Yes, 200,000.
Okay.
200,000 naira. Okay. Yes, depending on how serious the battery is.
Okay.
If it's so severe, you pay the 200,000 and you still go to jail for 3 years, for nothing less than 3 years.
Okay.
You have this harmful traditional practices. You have this stuffing, choking of one. Husband will say, where are you coming from? Why did you close 4 o'clock? Why are you home by 6? This and that. Where have you gone to? You know, even if the person is not beaten, but the trauma of stressing you after a day hard work and all that, the VAPAT has taken care of them.
Can this document be easily accessible by the public?
Well, in fact, FIDA ABUJA is even planning a seminar, crusade, advocacy campaign on this, so that we popularize it in FCT and make it accessible, more accessible, because now it's accessible, but more accessible to the public.
Thank you. So how can this ill of domestic violence be tamed?
Yes, it's a true advocacy, enlightenment, you know, like we've been doing, but it's not enough. It's not enough, and we've been calling other sister organizations to join in educating our people on this, because sometimes you find out that even when it happens and you're aware of it and you want to take it up, our women are not ready to, you know, come out and say, yes, my husband has battered me, or this is it. You find that, what's wrong with you? Say, I just fell in the bathroom. Meanwhile, the man had just finished using her as a punching bag, you know. So this culture of silence is one area that needs to be dealt with. People should be able to speak out when it happens, even if it's not directly on you. It might be on your neighbor, on your child, on your friend, you know, like that. And even the victims themselves, sometimes they rush here to us. They rush to us in FIDA, and you know, looking at it, seeing it, having interviewed their spouse, and they will say, no, this cannot continue on. At a point, the woman will back out. Maybe she's been settled. Maybe her pastor had called her to say, no, you are a child of God, you can't do this and that. Or the traditional ruler has said, in this community, you don't talk back at your husband, or you cannot do anything because you are a chattel. You are his property, and he can. And some women endure unto death. So we really need to go out there and sensitize our people that there's nothing wrong in you crying out. That thing you are trying to preserve, that name you are trying to preserve, is only when you are alive that you can answer that name. If you are not there, another person takes over, and that's the end of it. So the earlier the better. Yes, we believe in for better, for worse. For those that believe in that. Marriage is not to be endured, it's to be enjoyed. So if that salt there, if the test is lost, there will be no point for you to die for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is FIDA doing to help the society mitigate the ills of domestic violence?
Yes, we are putting on a program, though we've been carrying out a sensitization, you know, campaign on this. On the ills of domestic violence in general, discrimination, which domestic violence is part of. We've been going out for that, but we are planning a sensitization workshop that will be so robust to accommodate both the police, our judges, the lawyers, the populace on this VAP Act. Because the VAP Act has spelled it all out. So we are planning this workshop, but you know, in this era of change, it takes a lot to put such a program that we really make impact together, and that's why we're still on the planning stage.
What is your advice to parents, guardians, husbands, and wives out there?
a starting point is the home. A child that is nurtured in a violence-free home cannot grow up to become a violent person. So our parents should try as much as possible to see that their children are not brought up in a horrible environment that will make them feel the world is like that. If fathers and mothers knows how to iron their differences without involving their children or without doing it in presence of the children, it will go a long way helping these children to grow into a free and fair society. Another place is the school. So we admonish parents to, as much as possible, try and finish up whatever they tend to see as a challenge, because there's no gainsay that there won't be issues in the home. But where there are, parents should, as much as possible, be able to control the situation to ensure that the children are not brought into it or witness ugly situations that will register in their mind and they see it as part of life. Then schools too. We appeal to our teachers. Like recently we started a program. We had a permission from the FCT administration to go around the whole schools in FCT, sensitizing our pupil on this Child Rights Act, their rights, their responsibility, how they're supposed to be, and all that. So we admonished their teachers to also go in line with this. Let these children know that violence is not part of life and should not be tolerated. A male student cannot hit a female student. Neither can a female hit the male student. They can discuss, they can disagree to agree without going violent. So that's it. Then the religious sections too. Our pastors, our imams, our traditional rulers should help in this area. Where there's violence, there's violence. You won't say because God said there should be no divorce and this and that, and the woman should endure battery from day one to the last day until she goes into her grave.
Thank you very much, Ma, for this educative interaction. It's really an honor having you, Madam Chairperson, International Federation of Female Lawyers, Abuja branch. It's an honor having you on this episode.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. I think you go with this.
Oh.
And we're talking of our.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You just watch Judiciary Watch.
Because there's no program that is like it.
I hope you had a great time with our guest, Barrister IKENGA NGOZI THERESA. This is how we wrap up on today's episode of Judiciary Watch. Keep a date with us, same time, same station, for more updates and discuss on the justice system. Don't forget to send in your comments and contributions to our email and social media platforms. And remember, stay law abiding.